Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'll be your host for today. For those who don't know, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about bringing science, conservation, adventure into classrooms across North America and hopefully beyond. Thrilled to be joined today by Olie Hunter-Smart. Olie is in the UK joining us today, and he's preparing actually in about 24 hours to hop on a flight to India. So he's going to be walking solo the length of India, so over 4,000 kilometers. He'll be learning about the people, learning about the country, its historical connections to Britain. It's going to be an amazing trip. Olie's also no stranger to long distance journeys, having recently completed the Amazon River Run, so over 6,000 kilometers kayaking the Amazon from the source to the mouth of the river. So Olie, it's great to have you joining us today.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really pleased we could make this work and fit it in after the Easter break and before I head off.
All right, great. So I can see already that we have classrooms who are watching on YouTube. I can see the viewers starting to pop on down below. So please feel free to head over to, well, you're already on the YouTube page, but you'll see there's a chat sidebar next to the video screen. Let us know where you're from and put in some questions from your students. We'll make sure we get some of those in the Hangout today as well. Next. To the video screen, let us know where you're from and put in some questions from your students. So Olie, maybe before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about the Amazon River Run? We were really thrilled at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to host you and Taryn throughout the journey. We hosted you in Lima before you left, then again in Manaus, and then again upon completion when you guys were back in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that journey was very much a kind of a personal project, personal ambition for both Taryn and I, and we wanted to essentially start at the most distant source in the Andes of the Amazon River. We then spent about 400 miles walking along the edge of the river, and the river there was kind of white water. It was kind of really steep rapids, fast rapids, steep descents. So we decided we wanted to stick next to the road for that. So we walked the 400 miles. We then reached the jungle, which is where the river started to flatten out. And from there, we then climbed into our kayaks and we then paddled 3,600 miles along the Amazon River through Peru. And we passed some large cities in Peru and then went into Brazil. And we continued all the way through until we reached the Atlantic Ocean. The whole journey took us about 130 days, 131 days in total. And we were paddling sort of 8, 9, 10 hours a day. We were really just kind of going as long as we could each day, as long as our bodies could put up with.
All right. Well, I remember that journey at the very beginning. You and Taryn were very, very clean cut. You had the ready to go, fresh faced. And I can remember at the end of the journey, the beards and the hair from obviously an amazing journey, but it looks like maybe the beard kind of grew on you a little and you're kind of enjoying that look now.
I'm gonna give it a bit of a trim today before I set off. But yeah, my idea is to try and keep the beard roughly kind of a similar length to what it is now for the rest of for the India journey. So, but you know, you'll find out if you check in for the future Hangouts, you'll find out how that's going.
So I can remember one part of the journey that you guys were a little kind of nervous about was the Redzone. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of the journey?
Yeah, I think the Redzone is an area in Peru which is notorious for cocaine production. There's a lot of drug dealers and drug cartels there. And that's where they produce the cocaine, which then ultimately gets exported to Europe and North America. It's a big business for those guys, and the military they try to prevent as much of it as possible, but you know, every now and again, you know, a new little production facility starts up in the middle of the jungle, so they don't have a huge amount of control on it. Through that area, we were paddling through that section for about it was about 5 or 6 days, and we had to get permission to travel through that section. Because it was so dangerous, we needed to make sure that the local tribes knew that we were going to be passing through the area. We also informed the military of our plans to travel through that area. So we were given 6 days to travel through it. And as kind of frightening as it sounds, that was actually one of the most exciting parts of the expedition. The jungle felt really intimate. You got these huge trees towering over this green river. You can smell the flowers in the trees. You can hear all the birds and the bugs buzzing all over the place. And it was just a really intense, immersive experience in the jungle. And, you know, we came across some tribes and we got pulled over by some of the local tribes, sort of their police, the Rondero as they're called. And they then wanted to check our permits. So we had to get out of our kayaks and kind of in our quite broken Spanish, explain that we had permission to travel through this area and showed them our permits. And it was all quite hostile up until the moment where they'd seen the permit and they felt comfortable. And at that moment on, it was as if something completely changed. And we were then invited in. We were given Masato, which is their local drink. And that is essentially made, it's a rather disgusting sort of alcoholic fermented drink made up of a root vegetable. And we were given that as sort of a welcoming drink. And we were invited in numerous times. It probably happened 9 or 10 times over the 6 days. And yeah, that I would say that was probably one of the favorite parts of the Amazon expedition is actually traveling through that red zone. Everyone was so friendly, and you know, once they realized what we were doing and who we were, like there was no kind of we didn't feel any further danger.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Call just sent me a message. His class is joining us. He's just telling me that he has a few students joining right now. It's their recess who joined for some of the Amazon River Run calls last year. So you've got a few, I guess, followers, who are following not only the Amazon journey, but are going to follow the India one as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, so that does bring us to what we're up to now. So 24 hours, I guess, until go time. So how did this come about? 4,000 kilometers solo walking through India. That's incredible.
Yeah, I guess I actually read about Gandhi's Salt March, which was a protest march that Gandhi did back in 1930. And it was a 240-mile route through India, sort of through from his hometown in Ahmedabad to the coast. And the reason he did that was in protest of the British salt tax. And ultimately I thought, oh, that would be a really cool journey to kind of follow and really try and find out a bit more about it. And the more reading I did around the subject, and this is obviously once I come back from the Amazon, I still had this idea in my head that India would be an amazing place for an adventure, and this was the right thing to do. And yeah, I was doing a bit more research around it, and I discovered it's the 70th anniversary of their independence from Britain this year, and that Gandhi's Salt March was really the Kickstarter for the independence movement that happened throughout the 1930s and into 1940s. And I figured that as I found out more and more about the history and so on, I became more fascinated by this topic. And it being the 70th anniversary, I thought that, you know, this is the year to go and do it. And from there, you know, I just sort of started looking at other places Gandhi had been throughout his life and the impact he'd had. And, you know, he spent some time in Delhi. He actually was assassinated in Delhi in 1948. So my route started to really map itself out. And then I kind of sort of thought, well, I might as well look to see how much further, starting at the top, right on the border, which is at the moment, that's still an active war zone. It's an area called the Line of Control, and it's the border between India and Pakistan. And they're still disputing as to, you know, where the border actually sits. They're still fighting over that. And that was something that we, the British, created. We created that problem when we gave India and Pakistan their independence, and we just drew a line between sort of the Muslim territory, because essentially that's what they were looking to try and do. Is Muslims, all the Muslim population wanted to be separate and have their own entity and own space, and the Hindu populations further south, Hindu and Buddhist populations. So the Brits just literally drew a line straight through through towns and through villages, and you know, there were people caught either side of that line. So that's kind of the reason why I'm starting so far north, and I'll actually be starting at a military base, a tiny little place called Baba, and that's at the bottom end of a glacier. So that's where I'm going to be starting, assuming I can get there. I have to get my permissions once I land in Leh. But yeah, fingers crossed I can get all that way and start right at the top border, and I'll continue down, and then I'll start to pick up the Gandhi story in Delhi and then follow that for a bit. And I'll just keep on going as I head further south.
All right. Well, speaking of starting in maps, I have the map from your website pulled up. Are you okay if I share the screen? Maybe you can talk a little bit about the route.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be brilliant.
All right, so just give me a second. I'll share my screen, and then I'll bring the map to the front. So it should be to the front now.
Yeah, perfect. So
okay.
most people have asked me why I'm not just walking in a straight line all the way down. And the reason for that is basically because of the Gandhi story. He was assassinated in Delhi, which is maybe a third of the way into the journey, a quarter to a third of the way into the journey. And then if you follow that line right out to the coast, a place called Ahmedabad, that's where Gandhi set up his spiritual home. He spent about 20 years there. It's in a place called an ashram. Oh, sorry, I've lost the map. But yeah, he set up this ashram, which was kind of very much communal living, where people were asked to kind of contribute, and you know, everyone had to kind of muck in and do all the mundane jobs that people don't want to do, but then they also got to sort of help out on the more fun jobs. So that's where kind of Gandhi spent 20 years. I'll go to there, and I've actually arranged a meeting there with the director of the ashram now, and it'll give me the opportunity to ask a lot more questions about Gandhi and what it was like at the time he was living there. From there, I'll then head south, and I'll literally follow the Salt March route. And I found a brilliant website. Someone recreated the journey a couple of years ago. They've done a huge amount of research into that, the route and everything. So I'm going to be really studying that quite hard, and I'll share that on my website after this session. Then I'm going to keep going down to Mumbai. Mumbai was the place where the National Congress, so the political party that were fighting for independence, they've got their headquarters there. So that's kind of the reason why I'm going there. Gandhi was heavily involved in that movement, and he was actually the leader for a short amount of time as well. And then I'm going to head inland to a town called Pune, which is where Gandhi was imprisoned. After he'd done the Salt March, he was actually imprisoned for, or he had another couple of kind of peaceful protests, as Gandhi liked to sort of call them. He was actually imprisoned after one of these in Pune, and he spent 2 years of his life sat in prison, guarded by the British, because ultimately the Brits thought that he was causing a lot of trouble, and it was best that he was just locked away. So he was there with a lot of the other National Congress leaders, along with his wife as well. And actually his wife and his secretary both died there in 1945, I think, 1945. So from there, I'm then going to keep on going through sort of inland a bit. and there's a mountain range along that line as I go past Goa, and I'll go past Kerala. But I'm going to stick inside the mountain range. And the reason for that is because I think I'm going to get a real sense of what southern India is like from those sections, rather than the more touristy areas of Goa and Kerala. And then the final bit is to drop right down to the southern tip, just where the cursor is there. And that's a place called Kanyakumari. And it's apparently when Gandhi's ashes, well, after Gandhi was assassinated in Delhi, his ashes were sent all around different parts of India. So they did a bit of a tour because of the impact that Gandhi had had on a nation. He earned the title kind of father of the nation. And his ashes went right the way down to the southern tip there, where some of them, where they were housed in a temple right on the coast, and they were housed there for a couple of weeks to allow people to come and visit his ashes. And then before they left there, they scattered some of the ashes into the ocean, into the Southern Ocean there. So that's kind of my purpose for visiting there. And it's said that the place where the ashes rested in that temple, on the 2nd of October, which is Gandhi's birthday, the sun shines through one of the windows directly onto the spot where Gandhi's ashes were sat. And that's still true to this day. So that's kind of a quick summary of my journey. Not only will I be following kind of the independence story and the Gandhi story, but also I'll be looking, I really want to get involved with any of the festivals, the celebrations, the festivities. I want to really get under the skin of India and try and find out more about what it's like to live in India and what it's like to be an Indian in India today.
Well, I have no doubt it's going to be an incredible journey. I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons from the Amazon River run. Is there anything that kind of sticks out that you're going to kind of keep in mind this time around on this next kind of long distance journey?
Yeah, I think, just being very culturally aware of customs and traditions. India has a lot of these. There are so many different religions in India, and they all overlap and intermingle, and it's an amazing melting pot of all these different religions. One of the things I've kind of tried to do is really read up about the different religions and how they work together and how people view each other. So I think I need to be culturally aware of any of the traditions that each of those religions has, so that I don't ultimately offend anyone while I'm on my journey.
All right. Well, let's jump to some classrooms because I'm sure they have some questions about the journey. What's really cool is we'll be able to hopefully connect a couple times while you're in India, and you can share some of your stories and pictures right from the journey. So we definitely look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right. Well, let's join Mr. Call's class. Let me turn his microphone on. There we go. They're joining us from Ontario. My computer, there we go. Cobalt, Ontario, grade 5-6 class. And your microphone's on. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Were you waiting for a question?
Yes.
Simply, what's your question?
Probably.
Do you have your own company? And if you do, how much money do you make? And where can you get the product?
I heard the first bit of that. So do I have my own company and how much money do I make? I don't have my own company. The reason that the way I fund these expeditions is I work in marketing and in advertising. And that's quite a popular job in London, where I live when I'm not away. There's a lot of freelance work, which basically means you can come in for a certain project. You can work on that project and it might be for 6 months or 9 months. I get paid for that, but I make sure that I'm saving a lot of money, keeping all the money aside to fund my next trip. But also, India is a very cheap country to travel in and to live in. So I haven't needed to save quite so much money as I would do if I was living in the UK full time, which will allow me to stay out in India for a little bit longer.
I imagine it's a little easier not having to worry about kayaks and such.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely the safety aspect. I'll have everything with me. I won't need to leave it, you know, outside somewhere or kind of out of sight. I'll be able to keep my bag with me the whole time. So that's an advantage to this expedition.
All right, Mr. Kolsklass, go ahead if you guys have another question.
Is Gandhi an inspiration, and if he is, how and why?
Yeah, Gandhi does inspire me. I think he was incredible in terms of the way he approached, well, the way he approached life, but also the way he kind of got people to join him and understand his way of thinking. And then he got other people to join him in some of these peaceful protests. So there was no violence from Gandhi at all. And this happened both in South Africa while he was based there, he was working as a lawyer in South Africa, but once he moved to India as well. And the Brits were, the British army were quite aggressive towards him. They thought he was a troublemaker, and they ultimately, you know, they hit him, they beat him, they locked him in prison, all of those sorts of things, which are terrible things to do. But Gandhi, every time he protested in a way that was peaceful. He never fought back. He never hit anyone. He never kind of said anything bad about the Brits or anyone. All he did was he just took it. Every beating that he was given, every time he was locked in prison, he took it as it came. But it made his point stronger and stronger every single time. And ultimately, the Brits were trying to get Gandhi to react in some kind of way that then meant they could then do something much worse to him. He never reacted at all. So he was very calm every single time. And that's a real inspiration. And he got the whole country behind him. And the whole country fought for independence. But he was the guy that kind of really initiated that.
All right, great questions. Thank you, Mr. Kolsklass. We might be able to swing back for another one. Mrs. F6 class, grade 5s are joining us in Weatherford, Texas. I know your microphone's not cooperating today, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the blue chat sidebar. And while we wait for those to pop up, we'll visit Mr. Nethery's grade 7-8s. They're joining us in Erin, Ontario. And Mr. Nethery, your microphone should be on.
Yep.
There we go.
All right.
Okay. What do you think will be your biggest challenge during your travel to India, and why?
No, not quite. I think what's going to be my biggest obstacle?
Yes, in India.
Yeah.
What's going to be my biggest obstacle in India? Okay, cool. There are a few bits that are concerning me at the moment. The first is the Himalayas. I've never really, and I know I started in the Amazon and I was at about 4,500 meters up, and I wasn't really prepared for that. But in the Himalayas, I'm going to be going even higher. So I'm going up to 5,500 meters. So I don't really know how my body is going to react to those conditions in terms of the altitude sickness, but also the risk of avalanches as well. I've delayed my trip by 2 months, which is why I'm setting off in April to really try and minimize that risk of avalanches. But ultimately, I think there will probably be some snow still around in the mountains. It won't have all melted yet. So that's kind of one area that is concerning me. And I have a guide through the mountains to kind of help me negotiate and navigate through the Himalayas. And hopefully he'll know the routes and where it's all safe to go. The second part is the temperature. that I might experience. So as I come out of the Himalayas, it's going to be about June or July. So that's middle of the summer for India. And their temperatures, they reach up to about 40 to 45 degrees centigrade. I'm just trying to think what that is in Fahrenheit. It's like maybe 120 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. So that's really hot. And given I'll be walking throughout the day, I'll be walking through the hottest part of the day as well. So trying to ensure I'm drinking enough water and staying cool enough is another concern of mine. But I think that one's more manageable.
All right, so let's grab one more question from Mr. Nethery's class if they have one.
You got one. Okay. Yeah, go. Loud.
How long do you think the trip in India is going to take?
So the trip it's 2,600 miles. That's 4,000 kilometers. And I think I've given myself 8 months for the trip. One of the things I will be doing as I travel is I'm going to be interviewing people about their experience of independence and partition. And ultimately, I don't know how long that's going to take. You know, a conversation with someone might be an hour for in a day, which will then mean I'm not traveling quite as far as I maybe could do if I was just walking through and continuing to travel through. So I've given myself a little bit longer. I think if I was to walk about maybe 15 miles a day, 12 to 15 miles a day, feels about right to finish that in 8 months.
All right. So Mrs. Sefcik's class, let's just test your microphone, see if it's working right now. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so they can hear, and it looks like you might have had a pad. You're going to try and go the old-fashioned way and stick the questions up on the notepad. If you stick those up, I'll make you full screen so we can see the question. All right, here comes one. Come nice and close. All right, you see that one, Olie? Why did you kayak the Amazon River?
Why did I kayak the Amazon? Ultimately, I'd been traveling around the world, and I was really looking for another adventure. And I'd started planning a trip to row around Great Britain, and the people I was trying to do that with started to get injured, and the team dynamics were quite hard, and it was quite a battle to try and get that to happen. At the same time as we decided that's not the thing to be doing, I met a guy called Taran, and he was already planning this trip down the Amazon River from the most distant source all the way to the sea. And I got captivated by the idea of spending like 4 months, or what I thought would be 4 months, in the jungle. And I'd been to the jungle before, so I wanted to have another big expedition in the jungle and really get to live and experience the jungle as it is. And it is an amazing place. The kayaking was just a very easy way to get through along the length of the river.
All right, and Weatherford, Texas, do you guys have another one for us? I see waving, so maybe. Yep, heads nodding. Here comes another question. So what age were you when you got this idea? How old were you when you had this idea? Maybe for both trips. Yeah,
for both trips, absolutely. So for the Amazon trip, I was 31. I was 31 when I had the idea to do a big expedition. And then I was 32 when I actually made that one happen. I'm now, I guess I came up with the idea for India when I was 31. And I've sat on the idea for a couple of years, and I finished the Amazon trip in November 2015. So I've been back in the UK now for kind of 18 months, so a year and a half. And I really started looking at this as an expedition, as an opportunity in October last year. So I've then spent, it's kind of about 6 months planning this. And while I was working at the same time, I was trying to juggle both things and trying to find a guide and figure out my route and do all the history research and so on over the last, kind of 6 months or so. And it's actually my birthday on Friday. So I'm going to start my trip, or fly up to Leh, where I'll be starting the journey, right at the top of India. I'll be flying up on my birthday and celebrating up there. So hopefully I won't feel too ill from the altitude.
Well, happy early birthday. And of course, it's an amazing way to kickstart a new year, that's for sure, with an adventure like this.
Yeah, definitely.
You got a happy birthday from the teacher popping up in Texas.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, we do have a question that just came in over YouTube. It's from Marley in Brazil. And she is wondering, often historical facts are interpreted from a Eurocentric conception. Do you intend with your journey to give a new insight to India's independence?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the main reasons I want to travel to India and ask people as I travel. I want to really find out their stories and their experience of independence and partition. I think everything we read in the media and everything that has been reported does have a very European or British view or skew on that view, on that experience. And I want to really try and find out what the real, what Indians were actually feeling about that period of history. There was a film that came out recently in the UK. I don't know if it's been out in Brazil or US or Canada, but it's called The Viceroy's House. And it's got some very British actors in, and it's about that partition period where Lord Mountbatten went to India, and he was the guy that was in charge of ultimately giving India and Pakistan their independence. And I watched this film, and it came out at the beginning of March. And I watched this film, and I thought it still has a very British skew on that period of history. And I think there are quite a lot of unanswered questions that the film raises in terms of what the population were feeling, what kind of conflicts they experienced. There was a huge amount of what's the word? Kind of migration had to happen so that Muslims could get into the right part of India or into Pakistan, what would become Pakistan, and the Hindus and the Buddhists could move into India. And there was about 14 million people displaced, which is an incredible number if you think about it. And yet we only really ever hear kind of a couple of views of that, or a very British view. So that's kind of why I want to try and speak to people and really understand and share their experiences. Great question.
Thank you for sharing that online. So Olie, you've got about 10 minutes. Are you have enough time? Are you okay if we swing back maybe one more from each classroom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. So let's start with Mr. Call. If you guys have one more, your microphone's on.
Good, Jim.
How much journeys did you go on?
Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
He was asking how many journeys have you done all together?
How many journeys have I done altogether? So this will be my second sort of big expedition. Obviously, the Amazon was the first one, and then this is the second one. Prior to that, I did an expedition through, well, it was around the world, but that was very much backpacking. So I took the train, I flew to a few places, I took boats to little islands and so on. So that was a whole year, being away for a whole year, just living out of my bag. This time, the Amazon was 4.5 months. This one's going to be about 8 months.
All right, let's jump in and visit Mr. Nethery's grade 7/8 again. If you guys have one more question, your mic's on.
Do you think India is going to be your last expedition?
That's a great question. I hope not. I really enjoy trying to get under the skin of a culture and a country and really understand them. And I haven't had an idea for another expedition after India. My focus has been on India, but the ideas just come up from just doing a bit of reading and research, and suddenly I'll think of something and I'll think, oh, that would be an amazing trip to go and do. And I do have some ideas that are sort of bubbling away in my head, and I've got a list written down, but in actual fact I haven't really, they're just words on a piece of paper at this stage, but hopefully I'll get the opportunity to go and do another one of those sort of bigger expeditions. But I think 8 months is quite a long time, as it is. When I finished the Amazon, the 4.5 month journey, I said to myself that's going to be the longest expedition I ever do, and I seem to be now doing an 8 month expedition, so we'll have to see.
All right, and let's see if we have one more question from Weatherford, Texas. Oh, I see a thumbs up, so the question's coming. Okay, so I think they're asking about the Amazon. What was the most dangerous part of that journey?
For a couple of dangerous bits. There were a few times, so the Redzone that I talked about right at the beginning, if you were on for that, that was considered one of the more dangerous parts of the expedition. But in reality, we didn't have any troubles there at all. It was after the Redzone that Taryn and I both got shot at by what could be pirates, or they might have just been locals that were messing about with us and trying to scare us. So we got shot at, and we were paddling around the corner, and suddenly 2 gunshots came over our shoulder. And they use shotguns, so the shot is kind of spread out like that. And the shots came over our shoulder, and we realized they were incredibly close. So that was probably one of the biggest dangers. Another one was I got stung on the Amazon by something in the water. And I'd just gone down, it was early one morning, and it was still dark. And I'd gone down to fill up my water bottle to have breakfast. And as I came back out of the river, something just shot straight into the side of my foot. And it was right by my ankle bone. It went into the side, and then suddenly my whole leg started going numb, and I couldn't feel it for about 5 or 6 hours. And that was terrifying because I didn't really know what was happening. I didn't know what the animal was, so I didn't know if it was poisonous or whether I was in a lot more trouble than I'd initially thought. But luckily for me, after about 5 hours or so, and I'd spoken to someone in the UK, a doctor in the UK on the phone, and they kind of said, you need to just monitor it and try and draw out the sting in a particular way. And that was boiling up hot water and using the hot water to try and extract that sting. And ultimately, after 5 hours or so, it kind of, my legs started to gain feeling again. So they were probably the 2 most dangerous bits. There was a couple of times we got asked if we had a gun to protect ourselves, or we heard about people being robbed, but we never actually experienced that ourselves.
All right, well, Olie, it was great to connect with you today before this next journey. It's actually kind of neat today where we've got a hangout later today at 2 Eastern with Dr. Heather Ross. She's a Canadian doctor, and she is about to head kind of to a similar area. She'll be in Tibet, and she's going to cycle for 25 days to Everest Base Camp, which is really cool.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm just on opposite sides of the Himalayas for these 2 journeys starting both tomorrow. You're both heading out, and so yeah, we're looking forward to following both of those journeys. Can you remind us? I'll send the link to the teachers joining, but where can we follow along? Where can people follow along, track your progress, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So on my website, I'll have a blog. I've also got an education zone on there. So I'll be putting this video up there for other people to watch, but I'm also going to try and put some lesson plans on there as well, so teachers can use those to learn or help kind of formulate a plan as to how to work the expedition into your classes. My website's Olie Hunter Smart, OLIE huntersmart.com. I also have a Facebook page which I'll be updating regularly with photos and short videos. So those are probably the two best ways, and that's again facebook.com/OLIE Hunter Smart.
All right, well, I'll touch base with you later today just so we can start kind of thinking about future hangouts. But
absolutely,
yeah, really excited to follow along. I know the 3 classes who made it live today will get first dibs on the next spot while you're in India, so they can hopefully follow along the route. But thanks to you, Olie. Thanks to the classrooms for joining us. And again, we can't wait for the journey. I'm going to turn the mics on in a sec and let the classrooms say goodbye and thank you. But good luck tomorrow. It's going to be.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And you know, some brilliant questions in there. I really like the one about Gandhi being an inspiration, and also the Eurocentric view of partition in India and that period of history. So thank you very much. And yeah, looking forward to sharing it with you guys.
All right, so I'll turn the mics on and we'll have to watch for Mrs. Sefcic's class. They're waving because we can't. There we go. So classrooms, thanks so much. Feel free to say bye and thank you. And
bye guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks so much. Logging off for today. Olie, good luck and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.